I'm joined by Chibuzo Kerike, is a public policy analyst with specialty in legislative matters. Thank you, Chibuzo, for coming on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, so I want us to start from a policy standpoint, looking at President Tinubu's last 1 year in office. I know you are very passionate about and interested in policy-related issues with regards to governance. Of course, a lot of persons would argue that, well, it is neither here nor there for them how much the government has achieved under the leadership of the president in the last 1 year, especially when you check it against the promises the president had made going into the election in 2023 about policy thrust, policy direction, and so on and so forth. What has been your impression this last 1 year?
Okay, so what I would say is that for those of us who assess policy and policy delivery, 1 year in office, even though politicians and people in government take democracy to be government of visibility. What can you do that people can see? But in terms of, which is also important because there are different categories of people. But again, in terms of policy, 1 year is actually about, we track policy design. How much evidence production has gone into the policy design? How much does it reflect, right, the aspirations of the people or a specific direction government wants to take? And then also, what are the implementation elements and framework? And how workable are those things? So what kind of results are we going to see? Because measuring impact actually starts when you conclude maybe like 2 years or even 3 years. But again, in a democracy, nobody is going to be patient for that because, like I said, we have different categories of people. There are people who need immediate needs to be addressed. So there are low-hanging fruit and policy impact that you can record even within 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, and what have you. But when we talk about large-scale policy that has to do with holistically national in outlook, you have to take a bit of time. So my impression is that a number of policies have been turned out, but I'm also worried about the coordination and delivery for those policies. So I'm a bit first starting with the policy to even appoint ministers and who, because it's a policy trust to make appointment, make a design of who should function where. And as you would have observed, at least more than 90% of the ministers, we can't find them. We don't know where they are. But we can see a bit, about 10% actively, taking over the stage and making huge impact, like the Minister of FCT, who made a policy that the issue of variation, he doesn't want to deal with that anymore. And you could see the pace at which projects are being concluded. Because I wonder why somebody will construct road for 8 years and will finish and he will leave office, that road is not in use. It doesn't make any economic sense, a complete waste. So I record that what the Minister of FCT had done in ensuring that contractors are committed and serious in delivering. Right now, we can use the Uye bridge, which is a major, that project has been on for a number of years. You could see the other about 10 lane in Asokoro axis going to AYA down to Apo. And so it was, he came, did the diagnosis and realized that the economic interest and variation is causing a lot of delay in project delivery. And that was, I see the Minister of Interior, the kind of innovation and timeline. It was smart and innovative. We said, we're going to deliver this in 3 months, in March, in June, and we saw him bringing stakeholders together and delivering on those things. Today, Nigerians can see they're able to apply for passport. Those things, people may say, how does it give food, put food to our table and what have you, when that's why I'm dealing with different classes of people in terms of economy, in terms of delivering on the economic mandate. The CBN has turned out a number of policies. People argue whether those policies have worked or not, because I keep saying that democracy is had to be tropical. It had to reflect the culture of the people, the aspiration of the people. The economic indices that deals with only numbers, that can perform in number and in the growth of GDP and in development, that the people are not being, so we can't leave that. You can't tell somebody that he has money in his account and it's 1 billion, but he's unable to buy pure water when he wants to. And that is the disarticulation we need to deal with. Why we want to record global competitiveness in terms of economic indices. We have to deal with the issue of day to day. How do we take care of people within our cycle? So I think a number of policies have been. There are many, many, many of them, like the consumer credit issue, and there have been debates about that because even the president appointed a young guy who is an expert in that area. But people argue that we need a producer's credit scheme and not just a consumer credit scheme. So, you see, but the government in their manifesto promised that they need to make our economy a credit economy, where people don't need to have the whole money they need before they're able to buy things, that they can have access to credit. And creating that consumer credit bureau and appointing a young person to drive it is a step in the right direction. But like that argument has come forth, I think also we should look at the producer's credit scheme, even if it's working with the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, and making sure even that association is audited, that it's manufacturers that are there. We don't want a situation where somebody without HIV was the president of HIV association people in Nigeria. So those are the kind of disarticulation we don't want to happen. I've also seen the repeal of the Student Loan Act and the reenactment that tend to reflect some of the cry outs that people raised when that law was introduced. So that is also a step in the. So there have also been challenges like the electricity tariff, like cyber security levy, so
which has not been withdrawn.
Withdrawn, unfortunately, laws are not withdrawn. So those of us in the legislative practice, when laws are made, unfortunately, laws are made in Nigeria in a way that there are no commencement period. If you look at the comparative legislature, what is the in thing is that when laws are made, even after the president assent to it, it doesn't mean that law takes effect. There is always a commencement period provided in all the acts. So it's for the people to enter when the law is to be commenced. And if the commencement period is blank, even though the act has been assented to, it doesn't mean that the law should take force. Those are the kind of things we should look at. So when you look at law that will have impact, we can say, okay, it will commence so period. So the president is already provided in most of the acts, commencement period. But over time, we take ascension, the day of assent, as the day of effective application of the law. So we may need to do so. People disagree with the, and if you look at chapter 2 of the Constitution, you cannot band people into band A, band B. People have argued, and they are right in their own opinion, that this is discriminatory, in fact, against the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I think section 42 also, that this is an important social amenity that has not been commercialized fully, so that individuals are able to do that, and not taking initiative to provide power for Nigerians is making government lose a lot of money. All the solar power we're importing are not being manufactured here. Yeah. The solar panels, the batteries, and what have you are not being manufactured here. So we're again experiencing huge capital flight because of misgovernance of the power sector, just like the water resources sector. If you look at all the people digging boreholes in all the estates in Abuja, if you have 500 homes, you have 500 boreholes in the estate. That shouldn't be. Government is losing resources because of capacity gap in providing water and, charge residents for it so that government can earn revenue. So for every time we fail to deliver governance, it will affect good governance impact, and it will affect revenue. So we now start looking for easy way to look for revenue. When we have consumables, essential amenities that people use every day,
Right.
that when you took at the multiplier effect, it will bring all the resources we are talking about. How much is water board generating in FCT? Because Indian people are digging borehole here, and when you pay them. So because dependency ratio for government supply is very low, it's not even there. Then when it's there, it's very low.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, some persons will argue and say, see, these ministers have actually not done 1 year in office. It's President Tinubu who has done 1 year in office. Because the ministers were inaugurated on the 21st of August, which was virtually 4 months after the president himself had assumed office. So they say, let's cut them a slack a little. Let's not put much of pressure on them. They don't have to do magic at this point. Some of them are still trying to understand their various portfolios and all of that. Is that argument valid?
How can that, nobody can tender that anyway. In fact, anybody that is saying cut somebody a slack, I mean, you probably campaign for the president, you read his manifesto, you may even have lobbied to be a minister when you were told you are the one who prepared your CV and submitted and what have you. But you see, understanding Nigerian governance terrain, I don't even focus more on ministers. I think that the ministers, some of them are actually doing a disservice to the core agencies of government that has the competence and capacity to render service within their sector. Ministers are supposed to be oversight managers, supervisors, providing policy direction, even through input from the experts. Because for every ministry, you have agencies occupied by experts and bureaucrats. Ministers' qualification, the qualification to be a minister in Nigeria, according to section 147, is in line with, is equivalent to the requirement to be House of Rep member, and that is a school sat. Right? So, but if you go to a DG of an agency, that is not the case. The law, the principal act establishing that they prescribe how many years the expertise, you know,
Cognitive experience,
expertise, you know, that the person must have, because it is those agencies that have the technical know-how. The minister is the political leader who provides policy direction in line with government, what government is focusing on. But what we're experiencing now is that reverse is the case. Reverse is the case, and that is why institutional failure is being embraced in the country. Because where the man who's supposed to provide direction and oversight becomes the star player in the field, it affects the team. So today, if we have a budget envelope of 200 billion for a ministry, the minister's office headquarters will warehouse more than 60 to 70%, and 30% will now go to the supposedly expert agencies with resource competence to do that specific policy area of that ministry. And that is what I think the government need to reverse. Because if you check the acts under each ministry, the ministers are to provide supervision. Agencies of government in Nigeria today are suffering, especially the ones that are not revenue generating agencies. And that is why all of them are scampering on how to do. So this is something that the president can address squarely. So that being a minister is not another layer of executive power. No.
You have spent, I mean, the last few days we have seen ministers coming to do their presentations, scorecard as they call it, in the last 1 year, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure you have also followed some of these presentations. Yeah. Talk to me about what has stood out for you, which ministries or maybe agencies you think have maybe made Nigerians proud a little.
Well, I think when somebody is doing well in Nigeria, people don't care about the party you belong to.
That's right.
They see it. I mean, even in the villages, they see that this person, you know, is doing very well. I also think that probably Like I have shared with you off a studio, I think that we are still experiencing politics in the organization of this so-called update. And for me, the title is not also reflective of what it's supposed to be. Cannot be update. Maybe they are trying to confuse people by saying it's an update. It's not update.
So what's
It's
the real
supposed to
term?
be a performance review. Right? So I don't know why it is an update. And then I believe that some of them were very much prepared and some were not prepared. I think that we can do better in terms of organization of things like this, because even the organizer provided slide presentation, and 80% of those who are presented have not used any of those slides. So I think next time the rules must be stricter. You have the template and the reporting framework must be very clear, and that you must come and present, on a PowerPoint display showing, because I mean, he's training. So having said that, there are people who have distinguished themselves, like the day the Minister of FCT presented, I mean, it was clear that he was in charge and he had direction of what he wanted to accomplish, especially the fact that uncompleted projects. And when we are talking about uncompleted projects, especially roads, we are dealing with something that has been here since 1999. You will now see most of the service lane in the urban areas being completed. We have also seen him organize town halls across the area councils, and they were nominating projects. And it was clear to say, Mr. President want to do so kilometer of road per area council. Want to address also number of health, primary health care centers, schools per area council. Want to complete new project before we initiate, old projects before we initiate new ones. I will want the Abuja light rail to take off. And I think I'm seeing something about the commencement of that particular, and that is, so nobody needs, I mean, you don't need any prophet to tell you whether this person is making a good effort, right? So the minister, I think yesterday, the Minister of Aviation, so you could see level of preparedness, and so some ministers are taking that serious. So I personally, I love young people. I'm also a young person, but we are the ones that advocated for the separation of the youth ministry from sports.
Right.
Because we know sports has a domineering spirit, and that it may have impacted on the development of the youth
Very
sector.
adversely.
So now the president decided to do so. And the day the minister came to present, he didn't impress me. Let me be subjective.
That's Minister of Youth?
Yes, Minister of Youth, because I don't think she was prepared for that particular presentation. I thought that as a young person, she would have used that platform to show the world that this youth ministry that have now been created is a step in the right direction. And they probably rehearse properly before no personal anything. It's just how passionate we are, and we know by her trajectory and track record she could do it. Probably her office didn't think it's something, or maybe because the Minister of FCT presented just before her, and
so he took her shine.
She was blown away. Whatever it was, but I think that the youth ministry will need to really get a proper blueprint on and clear policy direction on what we want to address. I see no reason why all the village association groups cannot be captured through an integrated system from the local government to the state down to the federal. Because if you go to a place like Southeast, every village have strong youth association. So you always ask, the youth ministry may be looking for where are Nigerian youth. They are not only those doing NYSC.
Yeah.
Most of the communities are already properly organized. You just to have a system of integrating them, and then have your policy that are targeted at them. So if you're talking about youth center, how many youth centers do we have in Nigeria? And how many are you planning to rehabilitate? What is going to be going on there? And when is the first phase of rehabilitation going to take?
How much of work are you doing with National Youth Council of Nigeria?
Nigeria? We have more than 4 presidents.
Right.
And in the National Youth Council, we've got the Nigerian Youth Parliament that I don't think they even have a current assembly. So, you know, if you go to places like Namibia, Gambia, small countries, you see how the youth ministry is organized. You won't even introduce any law in the assembly of those countries that the youth council has not made input. We cannot politicize, you know, everything. So I know that she can do it. Probably you don't need all this long time they are talking about to be understanding. I don't. What does that even mean? You need a time to understand your ministry and agency. Get up from your seat. Go to the agencies, initiate new ideas, get a memo. How many memo from the ministry have gone to the Federal Executive Council? In fact, how many ministers have brought a memo to council? Well, it's only a few of them. Only a few of them. So, and they have permanent secretaries, they have the bureaucracy with the capacity. You just need to sit down and tell people, do your work. When they do it, you make input, you go to council, argue it. If you don't win, it's like bringing a bill in National Assembly. You may not succeed. And what didn't succeed today can succeed tomorrow. Don't be afraid of anything. Get up your memo, go to council, argue it, hear other perspectives. They can tell you to modify it, improve it, or Nigeria is not ready for things like this, or what have you. And some you can use advocacy to, you know, achieve. So I don't agree to anything about somebody taking his time to understand. The president is taking his time to understand. Appointed you as expert, supposedly expert, to make that time to be shortened. Then you are taking more time than the president. Then the governance will suffer.
Last September, President Tinubu announced former Nigerian Ports Authority Managing Director Hadiza Bala Usman as the coordinator of deliveries,
result
delivery, exactly, essay on policy monitoring and all of that. And one would have thought at that point, 8-9 months ago, that was a step in the right direction because it would help to coordinate the performance of all of the ministries, their departments and agencies, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't seem to be like we are feeling the impacts of that initiative itself. I mean, it will appear we are all now looking for Mrs. Bala Usman.
No, well, I think that she has been visible because the other day I heard she launched an app where she told Nigerians that KPIs are in those apps and what have you. I don't even how do I put it? I don't think I admire her job because in a political terrain like this country, it's a very difficult job to do.
What makes it difficult?
It makes it difficult because are we ready for an independent monitor and evaluation and assessment of performance that is true and reflective of the actions of any minister? And the person will not think that you are trying to undermine his or her office as a minister. So I think that, you know, our job is very difficult, but the president took the right initiative by creating it. Now, you know, I mentioned to somebody, I think off studio, that where is she in this ministerial update they are doing? If you are the coordinator of resort delivery unit and the ministers are here giving us their update on the result they have delivered, that office is supposed to be there and take note, except they are monitoring online. I don't know. But I saw a report of her meeting with President the other day, but she's, in terms of delivering on that office, I think there is a delay in the kind of result we want to see because, one, the promise of quarterly review of performance.
Right.
But this is a political environment, maybe they are waiting for it to now be annual review. Two, I don't think that adequate publicity is being made as to what are these KPIs we are tracking per ministry or per agency. As all the ministers and the ministries under them been adequately furnished with information about key KPIs and the timeline to track them. I don't have that information now, but I'm aware that she established focal desk officers in other ministries or agencies that are, helping her to probably bring information or what have you. So, but I think that office is a very important office. It can help ministers, it can help MDAs to be able to be on their feet and do their job. So for me, yes, she's out there in some bit of the news, but she's also missing in action, probably because of how difficult it is to play that role in a political environment, where if probably she make any recommendation on the negative, the opposition will catch on it and tell Mr. President, oh, you lied. You said anybody who is not performing, you are going to sack the person. Oh, well, your own assessment has shown that ABCD didn't perform. Okay, sack them. So, balancing the professional result of what evaluation should be.
And the political dynamics.
The political dynamics. That could be what they are facing. But for me, maybe the alternative could be not just to please Nigerians, but to give Mr. President a true evaluation report of what had, occurred in the last 9 months, so that the president could make that decision, privately. Also, there's a lot of disarticulation in terms of responsibility of MDAs. For instance, National Orientation Agency, how much is their budget? But you see, all the ministries and agencies have budget for public orientation in huge sums that the National Orientation itself doesn't have. So these are the kind of the things that the policy coordination unit should address. We have an organization, an agency that has been existing for decades.
Established by an act.
By an act, with the professional and technical competence to do public orientation. Now the job is taken bit by bit, and the budget to different ministries and agencies. How do we begin to have a coordination system that allows National Orientation Agency to tap into those resources that have been warehoused in those ministries and agencies for national orientation of government policies, so that we don't keep crying that where is this agency? Meanwhile, the resources they need is trapped somewhere where they probably don't have the resource competence to deliver on that mandate. So this is the kind of thing I want her report to show, what we can do differently. Maybe this agency, if each agency that has budget on national orientation issues, education of people, awareness or whatever policy amounts to 1 billion or whatever, that 50% or 60% of that fund should be through environment managed by the National Orientation Agency, because they have the network, they have the technical competence, they have the manpower to do it.
And it's their mandate.
And it's their mandate. Now they are beggarly over something that the law has prescribed for them.
I want us to wrap it up now by looking at one of the remarks that the president made during the retreat for ministers and cabinet members last year. He said, based on the KPIs that have been set, those of you who perform below expectation will leave us. Do you think the president will find a will, or the, as they call it, a political will, to fire any minister or aide whose performance is deemed unsatisfactory?
I think it will be very difficult. Such decisions, remember, most of these positions had a huge political variable consideration. So for any minister to be sacked, it had to do with most time political consideration, maybe misconduct or what have you. But in terms of performance, I doubt if anybody, even if you're sacked for poor performance, it can never be stated
That was the
That is
reason.
that was the reason, because most of the people you see as ministers made huge political contributions,
One way or another.
one way or another, or their principals who nominated them. So the political dynamic for that kind of a thing, yeah, but the president said it in the context that I expect nothing but the best commitment and result to impart on the Nigerian people. And I tell you, the ministers and their agencies can actually do this. And the ministers need a better relationship with the agencies so that they can deliver results. Because the agencies are not, ministries are in Abuja. Most of the agencies have regional, state, and even local government networks to be able to pass federal government policies to the people. So I think what is not happening now that should happen is that the same way the president is holding Federal Executive Council meeting every Monday or thereabout with the ministers, we should expect ministers to have meeting days with all the heads of the agencies and the technical people and directors with them. This is what we are not seeing that should happen. No minister should constitute his or her office as another level of executive power, where people carry fire and be looking for, like we heard in the last administration, where a particular minister makes the head of the agency under him to even wait for him in a hotel for 2 weeks, and he won't see him. It doesn't make any sense. So we need to introduce another level of engagement. Since most of them are even in Abuja, even if they are not in Abuja, they can hold review meetings virtually to track their own policy direction, the effort people are being put daily to be able to, measure that effort, and then know whether they are in the right direction. What do they need? This is very easy to do. The ministers need to have their own days of meetings with the heads of agencies under them. Very, very important as a way of making sure that policy coordination being focused on achieving goal they have set for themselves are concerned.
When Betta Edu, I was thinking I won't ask you this, but maybe that's going to be the icing on the cake.
Okay.
When Betta Edu got suspended on account of allegations bordering on fraud, some persons had said, well, the president would, at the snap of fingers, get a replacement for her. But it's been months now. The president hasn't done that just yet, which means that's the only ministry, practically the only ministry without a minister as of today. What's the implication?
Well, I think whatever is the reason, the president renewed hope agenda. The only ministry that embodies that, especially for the common people, is that ministry. People have argued that, oh, we don't need the ministry, anybody can do those things they are doing. But the answer is no. If you don't have a central processing unit for your policy that has to do with social welfare, you will miss it, because social welfare has many colorations, and issues of humanitarian affairs happen every day in the country. We are exposed to all kinds of it. So I am particularly surprised that the president has not thought it wise to realize how critical, because to be fair, when the minister was there, she was very visible, she was delivering, she was performing. Whatever that happened that led to this, there's a lot of interpretations and conspiracy theory around it. But it was clear that there are certain provisions of the financial regulation they relied on, probably the public did not know about. But she was one person, I can tell you, that Nigerians could see that she was out there, in the northeast, in the northwest, in all the places we had crisis, identifying with them, setting up a process so she's an energetic person. So I don't know what transpired, but whatever it is, whether it's a political decision or a development decision, whatever decision, I think the president has not done well in leaving that ministry without a minister to oversee it. Having a PAM secretary run it, who is also the head of the administrative and accounting officer of the agency, places extra burden, and he doesn't have that political know-how, because his training and job description is different and is regimented, and he has done that over the years, placing a political policy management decision on him with all the competing interests for contract award, for management of, is not an easy something that a permanent secretary will do. So, but I'm sure the president had reason, but the moment that minister was suspended, we could see the gap in the palliative management issue. We could see, poor community. Even right now, that ministry is not saying anything about anything, right? And that is why it's there, because the renewed hope ostensibly reflects addressing the needs of the poor people, and raising their hope and making them to understand that government cares about their humanitarian affairs. Due to the level of poverty in the country, over 130 million or thereabout, multidimensional poverty is at the heart of addressing that. How they address it is what we have been arguing, that we need a multi-level integrated system that involves state parties, local government parties, federal parties. That the system where, though democracy is for visibility, but the federal government does not necessarily need to appear in my village before we know they are doing something. So I'm sure that structure, can be managed and addressed. And then we can have a multi-level procurement system that allows even local people to participate in the process. So instead of buying 1 million bags of rice in Abuja or Kano somewhere and be sending to my village, we can develop local capacity at that level and source it. We have created a boisterous economy locally while also addressing the needs of the people. So I'm sure, but that ministry, very important. Anybody telling us that is not important, I don't believe that. But in terms of structure and administration, we can better democratize it so that people can feel the impact better.
Great. Chibuzo Okereke, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it. That's how we call it a wrap on Global Morning today. Remember that the views of our guests are their opinions. I'm Uyag Mofwebe, and the entire team here at Global TV Abuja says thank you for your time.